Try that again. Welcome to the National Pulse. I'm Raheem Kassam, Editor-in-Chief of thenationalpulse.com. I apologize. I think I broke something here. Well, we're grateful to have you all with us today. I was going to open just now, and I'll truncate it to save on time, but I'm acutely aware of how many hundreds of thousands and millions of people out there are watching us every single day. And with the events that transpired yesterday, I want you, the audience, to know that we take our responsibility to report the truth and report the news incredibly seriously. It wouldn't just be doing a disservice to ourselves and our great guests, it would be doing a disservice to you, to the nation, and to the fate of Western civilization if we did not do that. And I want you to know that every single day, as this audience grows, as this show grows, as the site grows, that bears down on me and weighs on me, and I understand the gravity of it. And my promise to you is that we will always report the news fairly, accurately, passionately, because we are passionate about what we do. Now, in the next segment, I've only got about 2 minutes left here. We're going to bring in Steve Cortes, advisor to the Trump campaign, but I just want to say this other thing before we bring in Steve. We have an awful lot going on right now. We have an awful lot of news and an awful lot in terms of abysmal, appalling behavior from your political representatives. Now, we can have the debate about what happened yesterday, and we will have the debate about who was responsible for yesterday. And guess what? It wasn't just Trump supporters, but guess what? It wasn't just Antifa either. There can be no denying that aggression, violent aggression occurred yesterday. Property damage occurred yesterday. The things that we have talked about for months and months, all of last year, that we say BLM shouldn't be doing and Antifa shouldn't be doing, that also happened yesterday. And was it provoked by entryists in there, by troublemakers and trouble seekers? You bet it was. But there were also real Trump supporters in that crowd. There were also real Trump supporters in the Capitol. And there's no shying away from that. I sat here yesterday and I said, hey, I understand people's frustrations. I get people's frustrations. I totally, believe me, I've lived it. I am the target, right? So often of all of the targeting from social media and politicians. It's disgusting, fake articles written about me. I know it. I'm over the target an awful lot. So don't worry. There will be no going wobbly, as Margaret Thatcher used to say, from this chair. But we also have to have an honest conversation about what exactly was achieved in the end of that. What was the grand strategy of yesterday and yesterday's events? Why were people duped in many cases into following that nonsense that went on inside the Capitol building? Were frustrations and are frustrations understandably high? Is anger palpable? And actually, is anger rational in a lot of these instances? You've got members of the U.S. Congress talking about the 25th Amendment right now. You're damn right anger is palpable. You're damn right anger is warranted. But property damage like that? It hurt. I'm going to be joined by Steve Cortes in just a second. We're going to take a quick break here. Stick around. We've got loads to talk about. Lest we forget that a woman died yesterday. Actually, 4 people died yesterday. We'll talk about all of that. But I want to make sure that we keep the people who suffered at the hands of the state yesterday in our thoughts and in our prayers, and their family members. Because the state didn't treat the left like that when they protested and rioted. And sure, is it a race to the bottom? No. But should we have some level of interest and intrigue about why two sides are treated so very differently? Yeah, of course. And we should have that conversation, and we will, over the course of the show today. Alistair Riviere is back in studio with us, and he doesn't like when I use the word execution. to describe what happened to Ashley Babbitt yesterday, and we'll talk about it. We'll get into it. This is a discussion. This is a discourse. It's time to have it. I want to bring Steve Cortes into the conversation now. Steve Cortes has been one of the leading lights for the America First movement. Steve, I guess my first question is, with all of the talk we're hearing now, okay, so Shopify has banned the Trump campaign, Twitter suspended the president, Facebook is now, he's off, Instagram indefinitely off, Kinzinger's talking about the 25th Amendment, Schumer, Pelosi, AOC. I guess my question is it over? Is America First over?
It is not. As a matter of fact, we are in the early innings, and in a perverse way, we should take it as a compliment. And what I mean by that is big tech, which increasingly acts like Big Brother, they think that they can take a kill shot right now because they know how potent our movement is. We showed that with that absolute sea of patriots on the Washington Mall yesterday. Never mind that there were a few hooligans who decided to act violently within the Capitol. There were hundreds of thousands, perhaps even into the millions, of patriotic, wonderful, America First believing MAGA people who descended upon the Capitol, even though they knew full well that it was an uphill battle inside the halls of Congress. So this movement is still very young. But having said that, we do have to take very seriously this pernicious threat, particularly from big tech. I wrote an article for your amazing publication about our country faces a fulcrum choice this week, really, and of course into the coming days and months ahead. But the choice is republic or oligarchy, and I really believe that. Are we going to thrive and persist as the greatest republic in the history of the world, or will we devolve into oligarchy? Well, the oligarchy, I believe, to be specific, there are a lot of powerful groups that want to control our lives via the oligarchy, but I think there are three that are most important, and they are the administrative state via establishment elected politicians, then the corporate media, and then third, and I think most dangerous of all, the one that I just mentioned, which is big tech, big business broadly, but big tech specifically. The fact that they are deplatforming the president of the United States, that they are effectively neutering him with only 2 weeks to go in office. It's an incredible affront to our liberty. By the way, I would warn progressives out there, don't think you're immune to this. So don't think that they won't come after you at some point. They will once they're emboldened. And I'll also say this about President Trump. As much as I admire him and the record he has compiled in these 4 years, I think it's just amazing. I think he's the most successful president in modern American history. But one big miss of this administration is that we did not take on big tech. I'm not sure President Trump realized quite the threat that big tech is to our way of life, to the Constitution, to the movement, and to him personally.
Steve, so many important points there. So let me take you up on some of them. Does it create an aura of peace and of reconciliation as a nation, of unity, of coming together, of refreshing, of cleaning all the wounds that we've taken together as a civilization over the last 4 years? Does it create that to ban the president, his campaign, his supporters? It's not just the president, Steve. I lost 2,000 followers. I know some people lost 7,000 followers overnight because of a purge. They're not unfollowing me, believe me. If anything, I can see in real time the numbers go up and then suddenly, boom, they get taken away. Is Mark Zuckerberg, is Jack Dorsey, are they trying to create peace by doing that?
No. They're certainly not. It's interesting, too, when you mention your follower count, it's sort of the inverse of the supposed vote tabulations in places like Michigan, right? So, in other words, those spikes up in the middle of the night, those pro-Biden spikes up, you're seeing the same kind of thing inversed, the spikes down, and they are equally statistically invalid, right? We know that somebody's cheating, that these are not organic. They're not just happening. So, no, of course, it's not creating any kind of coalescing, any kind of unity in our country. And by the way, to that point, Joe Biden, somebody who claims that he's a candidate about healing. You know what he did today? He came out and once again told literally the most poisonous lie in American public life, which is the Charlottesville fine people hoax. That is the zombie lie of our time that simply refuses to die, no matter how many times we debunk it with videotape, with actual transcripts, with actual evidence. That the thing about it is, Raheem, it's a fairly easily debunked hoax.
Yeah, but Steve, we're
post it again today.
We're post reality now. Yeah, the events of yesterday showed you how post-reality we are. You know, CNN and Anderson Cooper and all these guys went up during last summer and said the BLM protests are peaceful because they're 96% peaceful. But when a 99% peaceful demonstration takes place in the president's favor, that's sedition. It's a coup. People need to be taken off Twitter. People need to be locked up. Eric Erickson, who's supposed to be a right-wing pundit, is a never-Trumper, was calling for people to be shot, and then guess what? They were shot, Steve.
Right. No, listen, one thing, I've often referred to Trump, and I'm not the only one, but I've often referred to him as the great revealer, because there have been a lot of people who ostensibly are conservatives, people that we have supported in the past, people I voted for, people I've given money to in the past. I'll admit, I was fooled by a lot of these people in the 2015 and previous era, but along came Donald Trump, along came this outsider, this great revealer, and he really tore those disguises away, thankfully. It's one of the great gifts that he's given to this country. And we're seeing even now, though, because some people were able to maintain those disguises, they glommed on to the America First movement for purposes of political expediency. And now that things are getting difficult, and let's face it, Raheem, these are tough days, okay? These aren't easy days for people like you, people like me, all the patriots out there in this country. It's demoralizing right now, quite frankly, to know that in 2 weeks, we are in all likelihood going to swear in an illegitimate and illegal president of the United States, to know that this theft has been perpetrated in front of our very eyes, and it is succeeding, at least for now. These are hard days for a lot of people, right? And in tough times, we find out who people are, and guess what? The cowards are running for cover.
Steve, we've got to go to a quick break. Just hang on, we'll come back to you. There's so much more to discuss here, particularly the talk of the 25th Amendment. And Steve Cortes is right. These are not easy days. But guess what? Steve Cortes endures. Raheem endures. Real America's Voice endures. The War Room endures. We'll be right back after this break. Think about the level of, I just keep using the word post-reality, how far into post-reality we are now, that you got Joe Scarborough on MSNBC this morning calling for the arrest of the sitting president of the United States, his personal lawyer, his son, people who are around him, probably Steve Cortes as well, somewhere down the line, I'm not that important, but somewhere down the line I'm in the list, right? Calling for their arrest, and at the same time, the fingers pointed at our side, calling us the totalitarian fascists. Just remember, think about this, take a moment today, just sit down, 3 minutes, and think about this president's legacy, his policy legacy. Don't worry about the tweets. Don't worry about what the media tells you. Think about the policy legacy here. Steve Cortes referenced it, right, in the first segment here, and said the only thing perhaps that was really missed in the first term was the big tech stuff. I agree, but the policy legacy makes this president one of the greatest presidents, not just in modern history, that there's ever been. When you weigh it up in the history books, how much he did in such a short time against every single odd and obstacle out there. Think it, internalize, and then be confident and assured in the fact that that wasn't just because of Donald Trump and who Donald Trump is. That's because of you and who you are and how you got that man into the White House. Let's bring Steve Cortes back in here for this conversation. Steve, we're told by everybody now the president abused his power by what? Asking people to protest? And then when the protests got violent, he put a video up and said, hey, we want peace. There's not peace. Better if you go home. And then they took that down. They put it into the memory hole. And Bill Barr's out there saying, oh, the president has abused his power.
Outrageous, Bill Barr. By the way, that's so important. I'm glad you mentioned it, Raheem. The paradox of saying that his video, which called for an end to unrest, and by the way, was effective. I mean, it really did stop right about then, if you look at the timeline. His video was taken down because the video somehow incites violence. I mean, that's circular logic. Only big tech could even get away with that without embarrassment. But to this point of Bill Barr, I think this is crucial. So Bill Barr put out some pretty tough statements today, the former AG, about Donald Trump. But it's interesting for him to now take these shots from the cheap seats, because Bill Barr has always been all bluster and no action. He was Attorney General. He had the potential to at last, and I thought he would, by the way, to at last go after the Obama DOJ, because there has never been a group in American law enforcement and national security, the national security complex of this country, who more abused its power than the Obama DOJ, FBI, CIA. The way they weaponized law enforcement and the national security capabilities of this country against an opposition campaign, then against an incoming president, and in fact, new President Donald Trump, is just unparalleled in American history. The fact that no one has been indicted, that no one has ended up in cuffs, and I'm talking McCabe and Comey and Strzok and John Brennan. He had 2 years to do this. He always said the right things, by the way. I will commend him for that. He's a silver-tongued lawyer, and when he would give interviews, I would cheer. He would say the right things, Raheem. But when it came to actual action, when it came to actually using the DOJ for actual justice, making the department live up to its name, he was an utter failure. And now he shows himself to be a complicit swamp rat. He has spent decades in the Washington swamp. Of course, he was Attorney General back in, I believe, the late 80s, or it was the early 90s, but decades ago anyway. And his disguise also has been removed. And so he joins the ignoble company of a lot of these establishment Republicans. I'll tell you another one that I'm pretty angry at, and that's Marco Rubio, who gave up and got up and grandstanded in the Senate. We know, because he attended a summit meeting just a couple of weeks ago, we know that he is chomping at the bit to pursue amnesty with a President Biden. He wants to join with big business groups, with Soros-backed organizations, one specifically called United We Dream, as if Americans don't dream, by the way. Only illegals dream, apparently, according to Soros, according to Marco Rubio. These are the kinds of people within the Republican Party, within our own tent, allegedly, that we're up against. This is the opposition President Trump has faced. He's always done it, by the way, with fervor and with success. To your point, what he achieved in the face of the obstacles put in front of him regarding media, regarding at times his own administration, regarding the Congress, it's really amazing. And he is not done, and our movement is certainly not done.
Well, Steve, we've got about 2 minutes left to go here, and I want to just reiterate, democracy dies in darkness is the Washington Post strapline, adopted after President Trump was elected. But isn't it interesting that the announcement was made by Mike Pence in the dark of the night, last night, that Joe Biden will become the next president of the United States? That sentence hasn't crossed my lips before that moment, but just now. And it feels as disgusting to say as it sounds, because it means they succeeded. It means the Chinese Communist Party succeeded. Don't forget their involvement with all of this, with Hunter Biden and the effing China spy chief. As he said, everything we learned about on the hard drive, all of the dodgy deals, the 10% for the big guy, all of the kickbacks, James Biden, that whole thing. The big tech succeeded in suppressing that story. And of course, the key perpetrators of the whole steal, the Democratic Party of the United States of America, with its fraudulent mass mail-in ballot operation, the Transition Integrity Project, all of it. We thought that if we shed enough light, if we fired enough warning flares up in the air, that people would see sense and that good would come to pass. And Mike Pence caved last night. He didn't want to do not one thing. So the question that everybody has with a minute left to go, Steve, is what now?
Right. Well, let me give you one answer for just the next 2 weeks, because I think this is crucial. And I think you agree with me. I certainly know the War Room crowd in general does, is we need a special counsel. The president needs to, and I've told him that privately. I've certainly advocated for it publicly as well. He needs a special counsel to look into the entire China Biden cartel. And I don't even like to refer to it as Hunter. I know people use that for shorthand, but he was just the bag man. Who matters is the big guy who is going to be the commander in chief of the United States, somebody who has been compromised by our most dangerous adversary in the world, the Chinese Communist Party. It's unprecedented in American history to have this kind of potential, this kind of national security risk. I really believe President Trump needs to appoint a special counsel. There's only days left to do it. That will be one important step forward. It's not a silver bullet, doesn't solve all problems, but it's a step toward normalcy and the truth and towards securing it.
Steve, we missed it, so belated happy birthday.
Thank you, sir.
65 this week. We'll make sure you're all following Steve Cortes. Steve, once again, thank you for joining us here. We'll be right back. More National Pulse after this short break. All right, welcome back to the show. I'm very grateful for all of you guys and gals out there who join us every day, who newly join us. I want to make mention of a couple of things real quick in this time of, I think we're going to see unprecedented levels of speech crackdown on us. Please make sure that you are not just sharing this on social media, because that can obviously easily be taken down, but talking to your friends and family and colleagues and people about Real America's Voice in person. Text them maybe phone call, those still happen, right? And tell them to download the Real America's Voice app. You can find it by searching America's Voice on any of the app stores. It's a fantastic app. You can get this show, all the shows across the network, War Room, all the clips all day long. And the best part of me saying this is they don't even ask me to say this. I just do it because I'm that nice to the network, and the network's nice to me back. The other thing is, make sure you head on over to thenationalpulse.com. And if you like what we do here, which is the news, thenationalpulse.com/support. We have a massive group of people who are in an all-day long chat channel that we set up. It's fantastic. I'm in there all the time. I even take sartorial tips from the ladies in the chat channel who want to tell me my shirt looks a little too grey and all of that, whatever. But we get down to the issues. There's all sorts of different channels. We do live chats, all of it. So come and join us, please. And it's a way to support real news. I don't think anybody of you out there right now want to be supporting any Republican politicians, certainly not the Republican Party itself. So if you still want to support the movement, this is a way to do it, thenationalpulse.com/support. And there's another great website that I want you to all to go to and follow and support, which is American Greatness. You can find it at amgreatness.com, amgreatness.com. The editor and publisher of American Greatness is Chris Buskirk, and he joins us now. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time out today. And thank you, by the way, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to put people like Bethany Mandel and Eric Erickson and all these people who were calling for protesters to be shot, and they got their way yesterday.
Yeah, they sure did, Raheem. I mean, I have to tell you, I always think, I'm a little callous to these things, but I always find that I'm able to be flabbergasted by just by just some of the outrages that are perpetuated by people who are nominally conservative, or at least claim the mantle of conservatism. Yesterday we've got Eric Erickson, who a lot of people, I think, on the right know who he is. He tweets out that they need to shoot all the people who were out of the Capitol yesterday. I think that's outrageous. And then, this young woman, Ashley Babbitt, gets shot and killed at the Capitol yesterday. And, at best, that is a horrible, horrible tragedy. And there were so many people on the left who were saying, they shouldn't have just gotten her. They should have shot everybody who was out there. That's terrible, right? But we sort of expected it. I'm from the left. I'm not excusing it, obviously. But I was more outraged and shocked and sort of like, I don't know, just sort of depressed by the fact that it was people on the right who were, their hot take was, no, we shouldn't have shot everybody there. We should have just shot some of them. And they got what was coming to them. And I think that's just outrageous, and it shouldn't be tolerated. And, that is, they sort of up the ante with the language, with all this hyperbolic language about, this was an insurrection, and these people are domestic terrorists.
A siege.
And, it's a siege. It's a siege, right? That's the language that we're going with. It's a siege, and it's terrorism, and all these things. What were these people trespassing and breaking the law? Yes. Were they vandals? Yes. Were they breaking the law for vandalism? Absolutely. But are we doing crowd control of political protests in this country just by shooting the people who are out there protesting? I know that we've always said that the left wants the deplorables dead, right? But it turns out that a lot of the DC conservative class wants them dead too, and just finds rhetorical devices to try and justify their bloodlust, which I think is disgusting.
Well, I forgot for a minute that you and I we've talked about the DC circuit, conservative circuit, quite a lot. So I'm going to ask you to expand on that point, because one of the places that I really wish that real conservatives would protest outside, peacefully of course, is the Heritage Foundation. You know, this is a think tank in Washington DC with a budget of about $80 million a year that professes to represent conservatives and conservative causes. All the while it takes money from and spins the lines of big tech organizations that silence and suppress conservatives. They're on the lists of the big tech people who lobby in this town as being part and parcel of the movement to support and defend big tech against regulation, Chris.
Yeah, that's what happens when you're part of the existing power structure, right? You get the money and everybody has their role to play, but some people play the role from the left, some people play the role from the right, but everybody's part of the exact same structure. And that's, I know that's what you're trying to work against. That's what we are too, because, basically my view is that this is and should be, and we want to maintain it as a middle-class country, and we want this country to have a strong, thriving, independent middle class. But basically what we have right now is a power structure that has allied basically a large underclass that has no prospects or has poor prospects with an oligarchic kind of techno-feudalist class. And it's like hammer into anvil to just smash everybody in between them. And, that is the sort of thing that is what brought, what was it, 500,000 people out to Washington, DC yesterday. These were not the lumpen proletariat, right? This wasn't the underclass that was out there. I probably know, 10 or 12 people from Arizona where I live who flew across the country to go to these protests yesterday. I'm not exaggerating when I say that these people are like, they're business owners, they're literally doctors, lawyers, they have families, they're highly productive members of society. And so the question that people need to be asking themselves isn't, are they or are they not domestic terrorists? Do we shoot all of them and their families, or just a few of them? Actually, how about this question? What is it that's going wrong in the country that prompts people like that you would think have everything going for them, to fly all the way across the country to protest like this? Right? This is like the analog of the Yellow Jackets in France. These are the people who never protest. And yet there's 500,000 of them out there because something's gone desperately wrong. And yet, the oligarchic class in this country just wants to write it off as, these are bad people, they're deplorables. Let's ignore them and sweep them under the rug. But, ignore them at your peril. It's only going to get worse.
And what's gone wrong in this country and in the Western world, where you actually have people on the left and the right who have the same gripes with the establishment class, and yet we always fall into the trap of pointing fingers at each other instead of pointing fingers at the established political class for all these problems. Chris, I want to talk about the latest moves that we're hearing about here on Capitol Hill right now, because something could be imminent, and that's the 25th Amendment. That is rendering Donald Trump disabled or unable to do his job. And I want to get your thoughts on that. We've got a quick break. Chris Buskirk, AM Greatness, amgreatness.com, here on the National Pulse. Raheem Kassam, Alistair Riviere will join us as well in the next segment. Well, if you're in the market for a new podcast, and I know there's a lot of people out there that are often asking for my recommendations and stuff, the Chris Buskirk Show is a must listen. Chris Buskirk is our guest in this segment, the editor and publisher of American Greatness. You can find that at amgreatness.com, and just an overall really smart guy. Chris, thanks for sticking over the break with us. I want to ask you about this because I think there is it's a very, very serious threat that the political establishment is levying right now against the president, and therefore I think really against the nation, which is the 25th Amendment, which is to say, hey, we beat him, we certified that we beat him, he's got 13 days in office, but we really don't want him in there declassifying stuff and appointing special counsels, and he may go and expose a lot of the secrets we didn't want him to expose. I would argue he should have been doing that all along, but he's had some advisors telling him not to do that. So how serious is this, and what's the kind of process we look at here?
Yeah, it's hard to really say how serious any of this is. I mean, my only and generally I would have said serious. I mean, because they did impeach the president a year ago, so there's that. I mean, and I think it always, it's something that is as monumental as removing a president. We should always take that seriously. But the thing that sort of mitigates all of that is just the calendar, right? There's just not that much time to do it. I don't know how much appetite there is to do it with the cabinet, which is it would have to involve Trump's cabinet. I mean, my guess is that just sort of the institutional conservatism and the innate, small c conservatism of people is just to run out the clock on this. I guess the one thing I would add to that is that we also have Pelosi and Schumer and others also talking about impeaching the president again, which, okay, good luck with that. But I think either direction that these people want to go, I think the game theory of this does not work in their favor. I mean, trying to humiliate President Trump on his way out the door is not exactly the way to ameliorate the tensions that were on display in Washington yesterday.
But there's clearly an appetite, or I can't understand why it would be purely an optics-based appetite, because as you say, that doesn't ameliorate any of the tensions. It doesn't get to the point where Joe Biden really needs to be at. So I interpret it as a real appetite, therefore, because it doesn't make sense just to float it and make people even more angry, especially when so many Trump supporters are still in DC and everyone's there's going to be more problems. So I look at it and I think about it like this, right? So it has to be a majority of the cabinet and the vice president that then they send a letter triggering 25th Amendment. Then the president is able to object and say, actually, I'm fine. You can't do this. You shouldn't be doing this. Then they reconfirm. Pence and the cabinet would have to reconfirm, and then Congress has 21 days in total to decide what it does with that information and whether or not it accepts the disability, right? In that period of time, as I understand it, Chris, Pence would be acting president. Now, that's. I mean, you just tell me if I'm wrong about that. But that's my interpretation of it. That's what I've been looking at on all sorts of different analysis this afternoon. And the reason I think this is so real, or at least something that they're trying to figure out on the fly of how to do, is because you've got leading people saying it. It's not just AOC, it's not just the Kinzingers. Right. It's Pelosi, it's Schumer, it's others within and to Lindsey, God, I don't like saying this, but to Lindsey Graham's credit, he said it wouldn't be a good idea. So do you not think, based on all of that they just fear that this guy is going to declassify some stuff, really burn the place down on his way out?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. I mean, that's absolutely one of the elements of it. No question about it. People, I think, want to make sure that he does not declassify the things that they've managed to keep hidden for a very long time. They don't want to see him issuing pardons, to I don't know, Ross Ulbricht, who I guess actually wants a commutation, or to Julian Assange, or any of those people. They don't want him appointing special counsels or using any of the powers of the presidency that he has, for the next 13 days or whatever. But there's also another part of this where they really believe a lot of their own rhetoric. I mean, there is this element where what they really want is they want something to sacrifice, right? This goes back to the point I was making in the last segment about the bloodlust, about shooting the Trump supporters and the desire to shoot them, the people who were out there on Capitol Hill yesterday, right? They want to find they want to find the bad person or the demon. They want to scapegoat them, and they want to sacrifice somebody in public in order to exercise their demons. And I think that's a very real part of this motivation.
Chris, we're really incredibly grateful for you joining us here. Any final thoughts before we let you go?
Yeah, I mean, look, here's my clear pill. Here's my optimistic take on this, and that is that this is a very vibrant, energetic movement that's just getting going. What it needs right now is really smart, equally smart, I guess I should say, leadership, and equally energetic leadership. And that's what all these people who were out there yesterday are looking for, and that's what the people who are marching at the state capitals today are looking for, is to do something that's smart, that improves the country. And it's incumbent upon us to try and find those people and to promote them, the people who are going to lead wisely as we go forward.
Chris, just remind our audience, where can they find you? Where's the podcast? What's the website?
Yeah, amgreatness.com, American Greatness. You can find me on Parler at Buskirk, or you can find the podcast Rumble, YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, et cetera, et cetera.
Again, incredibly grateful for your time today, Chris Buskirk. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Well, Alistair, I mean, how Alistair Revere does a lot of our legal analysis for us here. Alistair, how much do you rate this 25th Amendment stuff in terms of seriousness?
Well, whether or not they're able to accomplish this in the given timeline provided by the Constitution is unclear. I think that your analysis is pretty on point. Basically, you need the majority of the cabinet and the vice president to initiate this. Then it goes to Congress. Vice President Pence would become president acting until President Trump could reply. I think he has 4 days to do that. So the process is a matter of days. Then it could come back to Congress, who would then reappoint potentially Vice President Pence as the acting president. So it's sort of back and forth. Because of the timeline, it would come down to the last few days of
What do you think it does to the
presidency.
country?
Well, to come back to what we were discussing just a little before, this is really part of the cancel culture. The Article 25 is used for the incapacity of the president. It's if the president is incapacitated. It's not because there's a political problem. A political problem or crime, that's the impeachment process.
Is it an abuse of power to use it?
It's in the same. We're in a society right now where a private person.
You've got 10 seconds.
Zuckerberg is canceling the president of the United States, so it's part of the same process. It's just a cancel culture.
All right, we've got another segment with you, so I'll let you elaborate in the next segment.
Yeah.
All right, welcome back. I didn't mean to cut Alistair Revere off so much. I kind of did. But I want to go back to him now for his thoughts. Okay, so look, I think it's just it's an incredibly serious thing to raise. And the political establishment raises hell every time the president does or says something outside of the confines of the kind of third way, Bill Clinton-esque way of doing things, right? But here they are doing it themselves, acting like it's a totally normal thing that with 13 days to go, you remove the sitting president. And the question I have, therefore, is what are you hiding?
And the purpose of this amendment is really if the president is severely injured, for example, or something makes him incapable of running the country. If they're alleging that something criminal happened, which really is unproven completely, but if they're alleging that, it's the impeachment process. So really, what my point is, it seems like we've seen in the past 24 hours a private citizen, Mark Zuckerberg, take the single-handed position of preventing the president of the United States from accessing social media platforms. And at the same time, we have leaders in Congress who are calling for not only censoring the president, but removing him forcefully through a part of the Constitution that's not intended for that. And there are also, I think AOC today was tweeting that they should remove congressmen who support the president in the last few days. So this is just part of the cancel culture, and it's worrying because
is it cancel culture, or is it full-throated totalitarianism?
Well, it's getting to the point where the people who are accusing the president of overriding the Constitution are doing exactly what they're saying. We're living in this sort of 1984 world where truth is lies.
Yeah.
2 + 2 is 5, yeah. And it's worrying for the country because we do get the sense that there's two realities that are setting in, and I don't think that some of the people on the left are disingenuous in their beliefs. It's just that there's this two realities setting, and it's concerning. And when we see a President-elect Biden now, President-elect, he comes on and gives a speech explaining that
throw up.
More people. No, he essentially said more people would have died if it was left-wing protesters, which is, so he was essentially saying not enough people died. And is that really the message that we want?
Say that again. You're right. Say that again.
I mean, essentially, President-elect Biden came on today to give a speech after what happened on the Capitol, said if it had been left-wing protesters or BLM protesters, more would have been killed. So essentially the way some people can read that is saying not enough Trump protesters were killed. And this is the President-elect who's saying that he wants to unify the country. He could have taken a high ground, try to appease what's happening right now, like Senator Cruz, like Senator Grant, who are taking more of a high road on this and trying to explain, listen, what happened was wrong, but we need to move past this. But he's doing exactly what the far left is asking, is just to incentivize this divisionism, because that's, I think, what part of the country wants, is just keep trying to create this sort of civil war, and it's unfortunate to see this coming into the new administration.
Blaming the political right for all of it. Let's get the image, the still image. Obviously, we're not going to show the video of the shooting in the Capitol yesterday, but I want to show you this image of through the doorway, if we can. Put that back up on the screen, because this... Remember I showed you yesterday of the image of the officers who had their guns drawn through the door, and I said it was a haunting image? Well, this, I never thought there could be even worse of an image here, but there is. And you see on the left of your screen there, that is the hand and the gun of the officer who shot that former Air Force veteran dead. And yesterday on Twitter I said it was an execution, and here's why I said that. He sees her, they're almost face to face, they're about a meter or so apart. I don't know, do Americans use meters?
If we use feet.
Feet, whatever it is, about this much apart, right? And he can see that she's either not getting through that window, or when she does come through that window, he's easily going to be able to either jump on her and stop her, or whatever it is. Chooses instead, as you see there, to draw and fire in that moment. To me, that's a summary execution, because he's making the decision. He knows where he's firing, toward her head, and he's not going to miss. He's very well trained. These people are incredibly well trained. And I want to get Alistair's thoughts on this, because you don't like me using the word execution.
No, I don't like the use of the word execution here, because we have a process to review police actions. What I think is important to emphasize, at least on our side, is that the only legitimate use of force is the police force. There can be abuses, and there's process to review that. And I understand that it's absolutely...
What do you mean by that? Because it's a legitimate use of force if somebody breaks into my house. I have a legitimate use of force there, right?
No, the point I'm trying to make is, I think it's
not just the police who have a legitimate use of force, though.
In terms of defending institutions, they're the only ones who can do that. And I think that we're living in a time where we
empower them to do that.
No, it's true, but we've had this past year seen so many violent riots throughout the country, and I think that delegitimizing the police officers' role in securing our institutions is a dangerous path to go down. And I think using terms such as execution are probably not the right ones to use. I'm not trying to pick at straws here,
no.
Even though it might sound like that.
That's why I want to have the conversation.
The point is, if there was an abuse of force, we have the process to review this, and we do not want to fall into the trap of people who have been on the violent side of the left, who have denounced police violence all the time by saying it's institutional. And I think that it would be a trap for our side to do the same thing. We need to be defending the people who protect our institutions.
Well, I want to leave that question open for the audience. You know how to reach us. We have a tips section on our website, thenationalpulse.com. If you're in the live chat with us, which you can join for just $5, thenationalpulse.com/support. You can join in there. You can tweet at us. You can parlay at us. And I want your thoughts on that. Is Alistair the level-headed, minded person correct, or am I correct in that? David Brody, the water cooler's up next. We'll be back 3 p.m. tomorrow.